Okay, let's just dive right in. For the past, 3 years now, we've been told a very specific story. And it's a really comforting story.
It is. It's a nice one.
It goes something like this. AI is here, it's getting exponentially smarter, and because it can do the work of, I don't know, 100 people in a few seconds, it's going to make everything unbelievably cheap.
The golden age of deflation. That's the term you see thrown around.
Exactly. Robots are building everything, prices are crashing, the Fed is going to cut interest rates back down to zero, and we all get to live in this, high-tech utopia where your morning coffee costs a nickel.
That is the consensus view. It's priced into a lot of assets.
But I look around, and my coffee does not cost a nickel. My insurance is up, my rent is up, services are more expensive than they've ever been. So that brings us to the big question for today.
Yeah.
What if that entire story is a massive head fake?
What if it's wrong?
What if the AI boom is actually doing the exact opposite of what we were promised?
It's probably the single most dangerous assumption in the market right now. I mean, if you're positioning your portfolio, or really your entire financial life, for a world of falling prices and cheap money, just because ChatGPT exists,
You might be in trouble.
you might be walking straight into a trap. And you're almost certainly missing the massive grinding gears of the physical economy, which are moving in the complete opposite direction.
This is exactly the kind of counterintuitive stuff that, frankly, keeps me up at night. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today is Thursday, February 12th, 2026.
And we're looking at a document today that is, well, it's a beast.
It is a little intimidating. It's called Manal Mehta's Market Intelligence. And, calling this thing a newsletter feels like calling a Formula One car a go-kart. It just doesn't do it justice.
No, intimidating is fair. Manal Mehta is not writing for your casual day trader. This is, it's forensic analysis. He treats the entire global economy like a crime scene.
A crime scene, I like that.
He uses what intelligence agencies would call a multi-INT strategy. So he's pulling data from everywhere. Signal intelligence, deep biological science, macroeconomics, geopolitical chatter. He's looking for the invisible threads.
The connections.
The threads that connect things that, on the surface, look like they have absolutely nothing to do with each other.
It is really wild. I mean, I'm flipping through this stack of papers here, and on page 4, you've got a fire at an aluminum plant that's somehow impacting the price of Ford trucks.
Right.
Then on page 10, we're talking about nuclear energy creating a bottleneck for AI data centers. Then you jump to this, legal loophole that private equity is using to take over law firms. And then, and I am not kidding, we get a deep dive into a study about worms.
Elegans.
Worms in a lab that might be the key to human longevity.
And the scary part, or maybe the brilliant part, is that they are all connected.
And that is our mission for today. We need to see those invisible threads. We're going to go from the big 30,000-foot macro picture all the way down to the microscopic level of a single cancer cell, and then zoom all the way back out to global politics.
And my job, as always, is to try and ground all the wild science in some actual, investment reality. Because knowing about the worms is cool.
It is very cool.
But knowing how to trade the pharmaceutical company that's going to use that worm research, well, that's where you find the real alpha.
Exactly. So let's go back to that hook. The AI productivity head fake. This is thesis number 1 in the Mehta report. Walk me through this. Why isn't AI making everything cheaper? I mean, every CEO I see on TV is just screaming about efficiency.
They are. They're screaming about efficiency, and they're not lying. The efficiency gains are real, or at least they will be. But there's a massive timing mismatch.
A timing mismatch, okay.
Consensus view, the deflation view, it leans really heavily on a misreading of history, specifically the Greenspan era in the late 1990s.
Right, the dot-com boom.
Exactly. The theory then was that productivity gains from the internet and PCs allowed you to have economic growth without inflation. And, eventually that will be true for AI. But Manal Mehta points out this really crucial nuance. Anticipated productivity gains are inflationary in the short to medium term.
Wait, hold on. Unpack that for me. How can the anticipation of something be inflationary? That seems backwards.
Because before the AI can save you money, you have to build the AI. And building the AI is, and this is not an exaggeration, it's arguably the most expensive industrial project in human history.
More than the interstate highway system. More than the moon landing.
In terms of private capital expenditure, yes, we are in what Mehta calls a CapEx supercycle.
CapEx, capital expenditure. Big companies spending big money to build big things.
Spending truly ungodly amounts of money. I mean, look at the data he's pulled here. Big tech, so that's your Google, your Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, is currently on a $660 billion spending spree, just on AI infrastructure.
$660 billion. Okay, stop. I hear these numbers, billion, trillion, and my eyes just glaze over. It's monopoly money. Put that in context for us. What is $660 billion?
It's roughly the entire annual gross domestic product of Switzerland.
The whole country.
The entire country. Or, to put it another way, it's more than the entire U.S. defense budget for procurement, for buying new planes, new ships, new tanks, all of it.
Wow, okay.
So you have big tech injecting a Switzerland-sized economy of pure demand into the market. And this is the critical part. It's demand for physical goods. We are not talking about software code here.
This isn't just paying salaries for coders.
No, we are talking about concrete for data centers. We're talking about copper for the electrical grid, steel for the server racks, HVAC systems for cooling, power, just immense amounts of power.
So at the exact same moment, the Fed is sitting there trying to cool down the economy to fight inflation.
Right, they're hiking rates, trying to pull demand out of the system.
Big tech is basically dumping lighter fluid on the fire. They are bidding up the price of every single copper wire and steel beam and every kilowatt of energy on the planet.
Precisely. It creates this massive front-loaded demand shock. You are creating inflation now in the hopes of getting efficiency and deflation later, maybe years later.
And the Fed has to deal with the now.
The Fed has to deal with the now. And they know this. The report draws this direct parallel to the late 90s. Alan Greenspan actually had to raise interest rates into that productivity boom specifically to temper the demand from the build-out.
So the head fake is thinking the Fed is about to cut rates.
That's the trap. The reality, Mehta argues, is that we might be in a higher for longer interest rate environment specifically because of the AI boom, not in spite of it.
That just flips the entire script. If rates stay high, that changes everything for your average investor, for mortgages, for car loans, everything.
Everything.
Okay, so if that's the macro picture, let's talk about the people who are getting squeezed the hardest in this new reality. The report has this great name for it: the PowerPoint and Excel economy.
This is the White Collar Recession, and I want to be really clear here. This is not some future prediction. This is happening right now, today, in February 2026.
And the report quotes Mustafa Suleyman from Microsoft. He's the head of AI there, co-founded DeepMind. I mean, he's not a guy who just throws around hype lightly.
No, he's a serious engineer at heart. And he is on the record in this report saying that tasks currently performed by lawyers, by accountants, and by project managers will be, and this is a direct quote, fully automated within the next 12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months.
Yes.
That is terrifyingly specific.
Yeah.
If I'm a junior lawyer or a consultant just starting my career, that's not a 5-year plan problem. That is a my apartment lease isn't even up yet problem.
It's immediate. And it's not just some CEO making a bold claim on a stage. Mehta cites what he called ground truth data. He's scraping Reddit forums, specifically CerConsulting.
I lurk on there sometimes. It's usually just people complaining about their airline miles and hotel points.
Not anymore. Now, he says, it is just raw panic. You have junior consultants, the ones right out of business school, realizing that the grunt work,
The slide decks.
so the basic data crunching, formatting the Excel sheets, all of it is gone. That work was their training ground. It was how they learned the ropes of the business. But more importantly for the firms, that grunt work was the profit margin.
Right. The billable hours.
Yeah.
You bill out a 23-year-old at $400 an hour to make bar charts.
Exactly. And that whole model is collapsing. The report also cites data from a survey of supply chain directors. They are actively cutting headcount by 30% right now.
30%.
They're using AI agents to automate purchase orders, to automate inventory reporting, and these agents, they don't need health insurance, they don't take coffee breaks, and they certainly don't make rounding errors on a spreadsheet.
It's a massacre. I mean,
Yeah.
That's the only word for it. So if you were an investor, how do you play this? Because you obviously don't want to own the companies that are built on that dying model.
No. The report suggests a pretty clear short trade here, shorting professional services firms, with Accenture, ACN being the poster child, and also shorting data providers, specifically FactSet.
Okay, the Accenture short makes sense. Their businesses, bodies and seats, billable hours. But walk me through the FactSet short. Why them?
Think about what FactSet actually sells. They take publicly available information like SEC filings, they clean it up, organize it, and then they sell access to that cleaned up data back to Wall Street for a massive subscription fee.
It's a data aggregation business.
Right. But now, large language models can scrape, clean, and synthesize that exact same data for free, or, for the pennies it costs to run the query.
So their competitive advantage, their moat, is basically dry.
It's evaporated. If I'm a hedge fund analyst and I can just ask an AI agent, hey, give me a comparative analysis of Ford's balance sheet versus GM's for the last 10 years and chart the debt-to-equity ratio, and it does it in 3 seconds for basically free.
Why are you paying FactSet $20,000 a year for a terminal?
You're not, or at least you won't be for much longer. Their whole value proposition is being commoditized down to zero.
The disrupt ease. I like that term. Okay, so white-collar workers are getting squeezed, but the report says it's even broader than that. It talks about the K-shaped consumer.
This is thesis 3 in the report, and honestly, it might be the most actionable trend in the market right now. We've all talked about the K-shape before, right? The rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
It's been a concept for a while.
But Mehta argues it has moved beyond just an academic concept. It is now a structural separation in the economy. It's no longer a slowdown. He calls it a bifurcation. We are literally living in 2 different economies at the same time.
And the evidence he presents is just. It's stark. On the high end of the K, you have Delta Airlines saying they can't add enough premium seats. They're selling out instantly.
The lie-flat seats are full?
The lie-flat seats are full. You have a boom in house stagers, people who were paid to make luxury homes look pretty for sale because the high-end real estate market is on fire.
And that's because the wealthy are, for the most part, insulated from all this. In fact, high interest rates actually help them. If you have $1 million sitting in cash, you're earning 5% risk-free right now. That's $50,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing.
Free money?
Their assets, stocks, real estate are all up. They feel rich, and so they spend like they're rich. But then you look at the low end of the K.
McDonald's.
Their traffic is dropping for the first time in years. Wendy's is struggling to get people in the door. But the detail in the report that really, really stuck out to me, and I think this is just brilliant forensic work, was the ice cream.
The Magnum ice cream indicator. I laughed when I read this, but then it actually made me kind of sad.
It's a classic canary in the coal mine. A Magnum bar, it's a premium treat, but it's a grocery store treat. It's not a trip to Paris. It costs, what, $6 or $7 for a box?
Right, it's an affordable luxury.
It's supposed to be. But when the middle and lower class stop buying the nice ice cream at the grocery store, you know that the household budget is well and truly broken. It means people are trading down on even the smallest, cheapest luxuries.
That's a powerful signal. So the investment implication here is what the report calls the pairs trade.
Exactly. You play both sides of the K. You go long the companies that cater to the top hasso, luxury goods like LVMH, which owns Louis Vuitton, or travel, or even Chipotle, which caters to a slightly higher income demographic that's still spending.
And on the other side?
You'd short the mass market, packaged goods, companies like Kraft Heinz, or fast food that serves the lower end, like Wendy's.
Because the people who are eating at Wendy's are the same ones who are losing their PowerPoint economy jobs or getting crushed by rent inflation that's driven by that CapEx boom.
It's a brutal, self-reinforcing cycle. But as an investor, you have to see it clearly. You cannot just buy the consumer discretionary ETF anymore and call it a day. You have to be specific. You have to pick the winners and losers of the inequality gap.
Okay, that is a very clear macro landscape. High spending, sticky inflation, and a consumer who is literally splitting in two. Now, I want to move to what the report calls the second-order oracle.
This is my favorite part of Mehta's analysis. It's where he really shines.
So, second-order thinking.
Yeah.
For any listener who hasn't heard this term before, can you give us the quick definition?
Sure. First-order thinking is easy. It's looking at an event and seeing the immediate obvious result. A fire happened at a factory. That's bad for the factory. Most of the market operates on first-order thinking.
Cause and effect.
Direct cause and effect. Second-order thinking is asking the next question, and then what? It's looking for the ripple effects, the non-obvious consequences that cascade through the system.
The dominoes that fall after the first one.
Exactly, the dominoes. And the first case study here is a perfect example of just how complex and fragile modern supply chains really are.
Yeah.
So, event A, 2 separate fires happen at a Novelis aluminum plant.
Okay. First order thought, that's bad for novelists. Their stock probably goes down. Maybe aluminum prices tick up a little bit?
That's what most people saw, but the second order effect is much more specific and much more damaging. Because this particular plant in Sierre, Switzerland, it doesn't just make generic aluminum, it makes a very specific high-strength aluminum alloy.
Okay.
And there is one major, massive customer who relies almost exclusively on that specific alloy for their single most important product.
That would be Ford and the F-150 truck.
The F-150. It is the best-selling vehicle in America year after year. It is Ford's profit engine. It's basically the whole company. And because that one specific plant in Switzerland is offline, Ford has to scramble. They have to keep the production line running.
So they have to find that aluminum somewhere else.
They have to import it from other suppliers to keep the line running. But, and here's an absolute kicker, the second-order insight. That imported aluminum is subject to hefty U.S. tariffs.
Oh, I see where this is going. It's not just a supply problem.
It's a margin problem, a huge one. So Ford isn't just dealing with the supply chain headache. They are taking a massive direct hit to their profit margins on every single truck they build because they are forced to pay tariffs on the replacement metal.
And how big of a hit are we talking about?
The report estimates it's $1 billion margin hit, $1 billion. The market priced in the fire at the Novelis plant. It did not price in the $1 billion tariff bill that Ford is now facing.
So the trade is short Ford, ticker F. That is brilliant. It's seeing the invisible bill that's coming due 3 months from now.
That's second-order thinking. Let's look at another one, which ties back to our AI theme. We talked about the AI energy hunger. We know these massive data centers need power 24/7, 365.
Don't stop.
You can't have downtime. Solar and wind are great, but they're intermittent. The sun doesn't shine at night. The wind doesn't always blow.
So you need baseload power, which historically means coal, natural gas, or nuclear.
Exactly. And all these big tech companies have their net zero climate goals. They can't just go out and build a bunch of new coal plants. So that leaves nuclear as really the only carbon-free 247 baseload option.
Right, but there's a problem there too, isn't there? Building a new nuclear plant takes, what, 15 years and tens of billions of dollars?
If you're lucky, we don't have 15 years. The data centers are being built now. They need the power now.
Which brings us to a company called Alva Energy.
If I hadn't heard of them before this report, it's a startup backed by Pat Gelsinger's venture capital firm.
They're fascinating. They aren't trying to do the impossible, which is build new nuclear plants from scratch. They are solving the bottleneck through a process called upgrading.
Upgrading, what's that? Think of it like putting a turbocharger on an old car engine. They go to an existing, older nuclear plant, and they attach a new, modern, hyper-efficient steam turbine to the side of it. It captures more of the heat that was previously being wasted as exhaust and converts it into more electricity.
So they're just squeezing more juice out of the same lemon.
Exactly. They can boost the output of an existing plant by 20 to 30%. And because they're not touching the actual nuclear reactor core, they get to skip years and years of regulatory hell.
That's a huge shortcut. So the second order play here isn't just betting on AI companies. It's betting on the companies that own the old nuclear plants that can be turbocharged.
And the report points directly to one, Constellation Energy, ticker CUGLY.
Constellation Energy.
They are the largest single operator of nuclear power plants in the United States. They are the shovel seller for the AI power boom. If Alva Energy's technology works as advertised, Constellation's existing assets suddenly become 30% more valuable without them having to dig a single hole in the ground.
That connects perfectly back to that CapEx supercycle we started with. The money is flowing into the physical grid, into the power plants. Okay, next case study, the optical chip revolution.
This one gets a bit more technical, but stick with me, because the physics here are what dictate the economics. Right now, computer chips use electricity to move data around, electrons flowing through tiny copper wires.
Standard stuff. It's how computers have worked forever.
But we are hitting a wall. As chips get faster and smaller, those copper wires get infinitesimally thin, and when you try to push a lot of electrons through a tiny little wire, you get resistance.
And resistance creates heat.
A ton of heat. Heat slows things down, and eventually it just melts the chip. We are hitting the physical limits of electricity as a medium for data transfer at this scale.
So the solution is to stop using electrons and start using light, photons.
Optical interconnects, moving data with light instead of electricity. Light has virtually no resistance, it generates no heat, and it moves at, well, the speed of light.
Seems like a no-brainer.
It's incredibly difficult to engineer, but there's a startup mentioned in the report called Olix. The founder is 25 years old and just raised $220 million.
$220 million for a 25-year-old. That is some serious validation.
It validates the entire technological approach. If that kind of smart money is betting $250 million that optical computing is real and it's coming soon, then we as public market investors need to look for the public players who will benefit.
And the report points to?
Marvell Technology, ticker MRVL.
Why Marvell specifically?
Because they make the key optical components, the DSPs, the digital signal processors, the interconnects that every data center will need if this shift from electrical to optical happens. They are the arms dealer in the coming optical war.
So Olix is the high-risk, high-reward moonshot.
Right.
But Marvell is the public infrastructure play. Whether Olix wins or some other startup wins, they will all likely need to buy Marvell's parts to build their systems.
That's the thesis. Marvell is the picks and shovels play on the optical revolution.
Got it. Okay, one more case study here in the second order section, and this one feels a bit sneaky. Private equity moving into law firms.
This is pure financial engineering. It's a heist, really. In the United States, there's a professional ethics rule called Rule 5.4. It basically says non-lawyers cannot have an ownership stake in a law firm.
So you have to be a lawyer to be a partner.
Right. It's designed to protect the integrity of legal advice. You don't want a hedge fund manager telling a lawyer how to defend a client. And this rule has kept big corporations and private equity out of the legal game for over a century.
But the report says they found a loophole.
They always find a loophole. It's called the MSO, the Management Services Organization.
An MSO. How does that work?
Okay, here's the play. The private equity firm, let's say KKR, which the report mentions, can't buy the law firm itself. So instead, they buy everything around the law firm. They buy the office building, the desks, the computers, the IT systems, the paralegal and secretarial staff.
All the overhead.
All of it. They package all that into a new company called the MSO. The lawyers still technically own the law firm, but the law firm now has to sign a long-term, ironclad contract hiring the MSO to run all of its operations.
So the lawyers are basically just tenants in their own firm, and they have to pay massive fees to the PE firm.
Massive, massive fees. The PE firm effectively strips all the profit out of the law firm without ever technically owning it. They control all the costs, they run the back office, and they take all the cash flow.
It turns the entire legal profession into just another asset class to be squeezed for profit.
It completely corporatizes law. The report points to KKR as a leader in rolling up these MSOs. It fundamentally changes the business model from a professional partnership to a corporate profit machine.
That is, well, it's brilliant if you're KKR, I guess. Probably less fun if you're a client wondering why your billable hours just mysteriously went up 20%.
Or if you're a junior lawyer who just realized your path to partnership was just sold to a hedge fund. And it connects right back to that white collar recession we talked about. The legal profession is being squeezed from both sides by AI from the bottom and by private equity from the top.
That is a grim image. Okay, speaking of shifting landscapes, I'm going to pivot now. We are moving from the world of hard finance to deep science. This section of the Mehta report is titled Frontier Science and the Synthesis Engine.
This is where we leave the world of dollars and cents for a bit and enter the world of biology and chemistry. But you have to remember, the potential financial impact of what we're about to discuss is measured in the trillions. I mean, if you cure aging, you basically win capitalism.
Let's start with longevity then. Everyone wants to live forever. We've all heard about things like metformin or intermittent fasting, but this report highlights a specific study on worms C. elegans that points to something called mitohormesis.
Okay, so don't let the big words scare you. Mitohormesis is a pretty simple idea. It's the concept that a little bit of stress is actually good for you.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's the biological version of that, yes. If you put your mitochondria, which are the little power plants inside all of your cells, under a little bit of mild stress, they respond by getting tougher. They become more efficient. And the downstream effect is that you live a longer, healthier life.
And that's the theory behind things like taking a cold plunge or sitting in a sauna, right? To intentionally stress the system a bit.
Exactly. Those are all ways of inducing mitohormesis. But here's the problem from a pharmaceutical perspective. It's really hard to dose stress safely in a pill. You can't just sell a pill that, poisons people slightly and hope for the best.
Right. This seems like a bad business model.
A very bad one. But this new paper that Mehta highlights found something absolutely incredible. It turns out you might not actually need the stress at all. The stress is just the trigger. The stress flips a specific switch, an enzyme called FMO2.
FMO2?
That's the master switch. And what they discovered is if you can find a way to just turn on FMO2 directly, you get all the longevity benefits of the stress without having to experience the stress itself.
So it's like getting the benefits of a hard workout without ever having to lift the weight.
That is the holy grail because it moves us away from vague lifestyle advice like eat less and exercise more and gives us a specific druggable target. We can now say to the chemists, forget the vague stuff. Go find a molecule that specifically turns on FMO2.
And that leads directly to the next part of the report, which I found just incredibly creative. He doesn't just report on the science. He proposes a killer experiment. He calls it the synthesis engine.
This is what makes Manal Mehta's analysis so unique and so valuable. He doesn't just read scientific papers in isolation, he combines them. He synthesizes them into something new.
So what's the experiment he's proposing?
He suggests taking that FMO2 discovery about the worms and combining it with a totally different paper from a different field about something called VLP virus-like particles.
Okay, break that down for me. What is a virus-like particle?
It's basically a hollowed-out virus. Scientists take a real virus, they scoop out all the viral DNA so it can't replicate or make you sick, but they leave the outer shell intact.
So it's harmless.
It's completely harmless, but it still looks like a virus on the outside, which means it's really good at one thing, getting inside cells. It's the perfect little delivery trap.
A biological FedEx package.
A perfect analogy. So Mehta proposes using these VLPs to deliver a genetic screening tool directly into human liver cells in a lab.
To do what?
To test thousands of different genetic switches all at the same time. Basically, you flood the liver cells with millions of these VLP delivery trucks, and each truck is programmed to flip a slightly different switch inside the cell. And then you just watch and see which switch causes FMO2 to light up.
It's a treasure map.
Yeah.
It's a way to find the exact spot to dig.
It's a brute force search for the on switch for longevity in humans. And if you find that genetic switch, you potentially have the key to curing metabolic disease and dramatically extending a healthy human lifespan.
And the companies to watch here, according to the report.
He points to the big players in metabolic disease who have the capital and the labs to actually run an experiment this ambitious. Eli Lilly, ticker LLBY, and Novo Nordisk, NVO.
It's just amazing how fast this entire field is moving. And speaking of fast moving, let's talk about cancer. There's a section here he calls the 1-2 punch.
This focuses on a specific drug in development called PRT2527. It's in a class of drugs called CDK9 inhibitors.
Okay, let's use an analogy here because CDK9 inhibitor sounds pretty abstract. How does this actually work inside the body?
To understand this, you have to understand a fundamental weakness of most cancer cells. A cancer cell is like a construction crew that is addicted to working way too fast. It's constantly frantically building new copies of itself.
Right, uncontrolled growth.
And to do that, it has to constantly read its own blueprints, its DNA, over and over and over again. This is a known vulnerability. We call it transcriptional addiction. It's addicted to reading its own instructions.
Okay, so where does CDK9 fit in?
CDK9 is like the foreman on the construction site. It's the enzyme that gives the crew permission to read the blueprints.
So if you inhibit CDK9, if you block the foreman...
You blindfold the foreman. The construction crew can't read the blueprints anymore. They panic. Construction grinds to a halt. The cancer cell can't maintain itself, and it dies.
That makes perfect sense. You starve it of the information it needs to survive.
Exactly. But here's the twist, the second part of the punch. When you shut down CDK9, when you blindfold that foreman, the cancer cell doesn't just die quietly. In its panic, it starts expressing a new protein on its surface, something called HLA class II.
An HLA class II, that's like a signal flare for the immune system, right?
It's a giant flashing neon sign. Normally, cancer is very good at hiding. It puts on camouflage so your body's own immune system can't see it and attack it. But this drug, PRT2527, it rips that camouflage off. It forces the cancer to wave a giant flag that says, I am here, I am dangerous, come kill me.
So the drug hurts the cancer directly by stopping its growth, and it calls in the cops, the immune system, to come and finish the job.
That's the 1-2 punch. And the report, in that same synthesis engine spirit, proposes taking this one step further. It suggests creating something called a degrading antibody conjugate, or a DD.
A DD. Okay, what's that?
Think of it as a guided missile. You take this CDK9 inhibitor, the poison, and you chemically stick it onto an antibody that is programmed to seek out and bind only to the tumor. So you deliver the poison directly and exclusively to the cancer cells.
A precision strike.
A precision strike that not only kills the cancer from the inside, but also simultaneously lights it up for the immune system to attack. It's incredible.
That is science fiction becoming reality, and the players to watch in this space.
The report mentions Prelude Therapeutics, PRLDED, for the drug itself, and companies like Arvinas, ARVN, which are pioneers in this degradation technology. This is really the absolute frontier of oncology.
It really puts the whole AI productivity debate into perspective, doesn't it? While we're all arguing about chatbots, there are people in labs figuring out how to reprogram human biology at a fundamental level.
And that's why we do this deep dive. The real alpha, the real world-changing stuff, it isn't always on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes it's buried in a dense PDF about enzyme pathways in worms.
Speaking of the front page, though, let's zoom back out. Section 4, Global Intelligence and Governance Risks. And we have to start with Ukraine.
The update here is significant, and more importantly, it's time-sensitive. We're looking at a timeline. It's February 2026. The report states, citing intelligence sources, that President Zelensky is actively planning for elections and a public referendum on a peace deal.
Elections during a full-scale war, that seems almost impossible.
It signals that the end is near, or at the very least, that the current phase of the war is drawing to a close. The report specifically mentions intense pressure from the Trump administration to get a deal finalized by June 2026.
That is a very specific deadline.
June. It's political. The U.S. election cycle is looming. The administration wants this resolved. But for you as an investor, the takeaway isn't about the politics. It's about the massive shift in money flows that this signals.
We're pivoting.
A huge pivot. The investment theme shifts from wartime investing, defense stocks, ammunition manufacturers, to reconstruction investing.
Rebuilding Ukraine and, by extension, Eastern Europe. So we're talking concrete, steel, infrastructure. Goes right back to that CapEx supercycle theme again.
Exactly. If a peace deal is signed in June, the entire second half of 2026 becomes about the colossal undertaking of rebuilding a country. That is a huge capital flow shift. You want to start looking at European construction firms, German industrial companies, materials suppliers, and logistics companies.
Now, from geopolitics to a scandal that's hitting a lot closer to home, the report have a very pointed section on Steve Tisch and the recently unsealed Jeffrey Epstein files.
This is a classic example of what Mehta calls governance risk. Steve Tisch, for those who don't know, is the chairman and co-owner of the NY Giants and a board member of the Lowe's Corporation.
A very powerful, very connected figure.
And new files have surfaced, showing his relationship with the Epstein network was far more complex than previously admitted. The official line was a brief association. The evidence in these files suggests otherwise. We're talking emails, introductions to young women, inquiries about whether they were working girls.
Ugh. It's just dark, ugly stuff.
It is. But as investors, we have to look at it coldly. This is a governance risk. It is a reputational bomb sitting on the board of the NFL and on the board of Lowe's Corporation.
And the report goes a step further. It mentions that Epstein's network was likely used for hostile state influence operations. That sounds like spycraft.
It's the modern version of Russian compromat. The report strongly implies that these networks weren't just about facilitating bad behavior. They were vectors for gathering blackmail material on powerful people.
So the investment takeaway is?
Due diligence has changed. It isn't just checking the balance sheet anymore. It's checking for these kinds of network connections. You have to ask, does this CEO, does this board member have this kind of exposure? Could they be compromised? Could they be forced to sell assets or make bad decisions under duress?
Because if a CEO or a board member is vulnerable to blackmail, that is a material risk to the company and to your investment.
A massive, unpriced material risk.
Okay, let's move to something that is purely financial, but every bit as cutthroat. Activist investors. The report highlights two big battles that are brewing right now. First up, Warner Bros. Discovery, WBD, and Netflix.
This is a fascinating arbitrage play. You have an activist firm, Ancora, that is trying to block Warner Bros. From selling itself to Netflix.
Why would they do that? Wouldn't a buyout by a giant like Netflix be a good thing for shareholders?
Ancora doesn't think so. They are pushing for a different deal, a merger with Skydance. They believe it offers better long-term value for WBD shareholders.
So you have a fight.
You have a public fight. And whenever you have an activist publicly fighting a proposed merger, it creates volatility and uncertainty. It creates a gap between the current stock price and the potential price of either deal. And for traders, that gap is where the profit is.
And the second one is Elliott Management going after the London Stock Exchange, LSEG.
This brings us right back to AI again. Elliott, which is one of the most aggressive and successful activist funds in the world, is publicly pushing the London Stock Exchange to get a real AI strategy.
What's their argument?
They're essentially saying you are sitting on a gold mine of proprietary financial data, but you are moving way too slow to monetize it with AI. It's the exact same theme as the short FactSet trade we talked about an hour ago.
It's adapt or die.
Precisely. If you are a legacy data provider in 2026 and you don't have a credible AI plan, you are a dead company walking. Elliott is trying to force LSEG to evolve before it goes extinct.
Okay, we are coming into the home stretch here. Section 5, the forensic watch list. These are the quick-fire risks, the potential landmines investors should know about.
First up is MBIA. They're a bond insurer, and they are deeply tied to the ongoing bankruptcy of the Puerto Rico Power Authority.
That whole situation in Puerto Rico has been a complete mess for a decade.
It has, but it's finally come to a head in the courts. And the report calls this a binary bet. It's very simple. Depending on how the judge rules in this final stage, the stock is either going to be worth zero, or it could be worth multiples of its current price.
So it's a lottery ticket,
Yeah.
high risk, high reward, not for the faint of heart.
Extreme risk. Next on the list is Shell, the oil giant.
What's wrong with Shell? They've been printing money.
On the surface, yes, but their auditor, Ernst & Young, just fired the senior partners who were in charge of the Shell audit.
Whoa, okay. Auditors do not usually fire the lead partners on a major account unless something is very, very wrong.
Exactly. It raises massive questions about the integrity of Shell's books. If the auditors are spooked enough to fire their own people, investors should be absolutely terrified. There's an old saying on Wall Street, when the accountant runs screaming out of the room, you should probably follow them.
And the last one on the watch list, American Airlines, AAL.
The pilots union is voting no confidence in the current management team.
That is never a good sign for an airline.
It's one of the most reliable leading indicators of future operational meltdowns. If the pilots hate management, morale collapses. And when morale collapses, the planes don't fly on time, cancellations spike. It's a disaster. The report suggests shorting AAL. You simply do not want to be long an airline where the workforce is in open revolt.
Okay, wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the AI inflation head fake to worms and longevity to retrofitting nuclear power plants.
It's a lot to digest. The threads go everywhere.
But we have to end, as always, with the provocative thought, the big takeaway. And this one is really the elephant in every single room in Washington and on Wall Street, the U.S. national debt.
The CBO, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, just put out a new warning. They're projecting that U.S. debt will hit 120% of GDP by the year 2036.
That's World War II levels of debt.
But without the global war and subsequent manufacturing boom to pay for it. And here is the ticking clock that the report says everyone in power is willfully ignoring. The Social Security Trust Fund is now projected to run out of money in 2032.
2032. That's 6 years from now. I feel like I just got used to writing 2026 on my checks. 6 years is nothing.
And that date was accelerated by the recent tax cuts. And the report makes this very somber, very nonpartisan point. The political will to fix this simply does not exist.
It's the third rail of politics.
It's political suicide. No politician, Democrat or Republican, is going to run for office on a platform of, I'm going to cut your Social Security benefits and raise your taxes. They would be destroyed.
So if they won't cut spending and they won't raise taxes, what's the only other option left? How do they deal with the debt?
Inflation. It is the only mathematical way out of the box they've built. They have to devalue the currency. They have to inflate the debt away. They have to make the dollars they pay it back worth less than the dollars they borrowed.
Which brings us full circle, right back to the very beginning of our conversation.
Exactly. The AI deflation story is comforting, but it's a mirage. We are likely entering a decade of structurally higher inflation and therefore structurally higher interest rates. The free money era of 2010 to 2020 is over. It is not coming back. This is what economists call fiscal dominance. The government spending is so out of control that the Fed loses its power to stop inflation.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've thrown a lot of really scary, complicated stuff at you today.
It means you cannot be a passive investor anymore. The old strategy of just buy the S&P 500 index and go to sleep for 30 years worked great when interest rates were zero and the world was relatively stable, but that world is gone.
It's not coming back.
In a world of K-shaped consumers, of AI disrupting entire industries overnight, of geopolitical risk and fiscal cliffs, you have to connect the dots. You have to be forensic. You have to look for those second-order effects we talked about.
Connecting the dots is the only real competitive advantage you have left.
It really is. It's the only way to navigate the chaos.
Well, on that particularly cheery note about the national debt, thank you for listening. This has been a heavy one, but hopefully you feel a little more prepared for what's coming.
It was a pleasure, as always.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.